Hi everyone, my name is Soul, and today I want to talk to you about Resident Evil. Welcome to Raccoon City. I actually reviewed all the other Resident Evil movies on this channel if you ever want to go back and look at those. I am not a fan of them. Thankfully, this time around, we are actually just taking inspiration from the video games. We're actually just looking at the source material and saying, hey, let's actually adapt that this time around, which was very confusing. I go into the film with my wife, who's a pretty big Resident Evil fan, and another person who only saw the previous Resident Evil films. And I feel like both of them were on separate ends of the spectrum of not liking the film. My wife was like, "Oh, this isn't like the video games," and then she was like, the other person I was with was like, "This isn't like the movies." And I'm like this happy medium where I'm just like, "Man, fuck those other movies." But like, I'm just casual enough of a Resident Evil fan that I don't care about certain things. I just am still just here for a stupid zombie film. And you know what? This film got slaughtered by the critics, but I don't give a fuck. I thought Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City was all right. I'd say it was pretty good, and I'll tell you why. So, we are adapting Resident Evil 1 and 2. Both games I have not finished. Keep in mind, I do love Resident Evil 4. That's one of my favorite games, and I've liked every Resident Evil game I have played to an extent. It's just usually half the time I just get stuck in puzzles or I'm playing with someone else and they stop wanting to play with me and yada yada yada. And that's how my Resident Evil experience has been. I'm sure it will change in the future, and that might change my opinion on this film. But that being said, welcome to Raccoon City. Uh Again, adapts the first two movies because they kind of happen simultaneously, so we're kind of cutting back and forth. We are introduced to Chris and Claire Redfield. We are introduced to Leon and Jill and Wesker. They're all in the police station, and we kind of cut back and forth between the police station, the streets of Raccoon City, and we even fit the mansion from the first game in there. And I know if you love these games, you're like, why are they just shoehorning in these locations? Why, like, it can feel very pandering, or so I'm told. But as someone who doesn't really care if they get the details of the locations right, like, they kind of just skim over a lot of the things they're adapting. It doesn't feel like they're adapting it for the sake of like really making it a good thing. They're just adapting it because, oh, that's what they did. We're just gonna copy and paste. And when you adapt and want to make fans happy, there is an art to it. It's not just meeting the exact same beats and delivering it in a different format. You got to actually make a story. There are certain things they changed that I like. For instance, Leon, they really lean in on he's a rookie cop. It's, Leon was day one police officer, but they really lean on it that he's this bumbling idiot who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. But you know what? He's a character. Compared to all the other like hot ass sexy actors who are just doing action face poses. Yeah, I'll take Leon. I thought Leon was pretty funny and charming half the time. And the rest of the cast, for a zombie film, they're not that bad. I enjoy Jill. I enjoy Wesker. Chris is just, a good face with a heart of gold, and, I don't think he's that far from the source material. And I know that there are some people like, oh, why did you take two games and put them into one movie? Half the time in Resident Evil, you're fighting the exact same zombies, or you're doing long ass puzzles that take God forever. You're going back to the save point. You're going. This film cuts all that fat down, and we're just left with the bones and the little bit of meat on there. And the things that brought it down were the fact that it was a Resident Evil film. And keep in mind, a lot of the things that make this film great is because I do believe there are some people who were working on this film that really cared. But the studio, I don't think gave a shit. I think a couple of the actors, a couple people here and there just did not give a shit. When you're getting all your recipes together, it doesn't matter how good the other stuff is. If there's a couple bad items that are expired, it's still not going to be that good. That being said, for what it is, I don't think it's a bad film. I'll talk about some other things I like. I actually like the zombies, believe it or not, because the zombies in this film, they're not just, oh, zombie, I want to eat your brains. They're not the traditional fast zombies. They're not whatever the fuck they were by the end of the other Resident Evil films. They're actually just really sick people who are trying to eat you. They are yelling. They're, very hard to predict. You still see the life in their eyes, but they're still trying to come at you and eat you. So it kind of adds a little bit of impact whenever you're killing zombies, just because they feel a little bit more like they're not walking punching bags that are supposed to be shot at. They actually feel like, oh, this is a sick person. And again, there's a little quips here and there. And again, there's a couple quips here and there that I liked. I liked Wesker. I liked some of the budding relationships. Wesker towards the end half of this movie goes on like his own quest line, and it leads to like this after credit scene. I liked all of that stuff. That is my favorite part of the film. That being said, there's a couple things I didn't like in the story as well. The writing is bad. I was trying to think. I'm trying to stay positive. But yeah, the writing's bad. I remember specifically there is a truck driver and he has like some of that dialogue that's just so bad that no one in the world's gonna save it. And there's a couple moments throughout this film that are like that, but there's some good stuff here too. It feels like a script that just was not polished, and sure, they had a few good things here and there, but it was not soundproof at all. They introduced this whole plot thread with Claire and Chris, where they're at an orphanage, and that kind of leads into the bad guy. I didn't like any of that. Even the bad guy towards the end of the film, he gets his big Resident Evil zombie super power up, and all that stuff was just. It just felt like, oh, we need a final boss. It's a Resident Evil movie. Let's put a big monster thing in there. It was kind of weird. It didn't need to be in the film. The whole arc with Chris and Claire in the orphanage, the girl with the weird face who's apparently from the games. Yeah, I think that was my least favorite part of the film, and little to nothing with that I actually found interesting or cared about. Really, this movie feels like one of those films you just watch on TV, or it's a fun B movie. I don't think anyone's gonna remember this as like, oh, remember that time they made a Resident Evil film and it was just so good. But that being said, I do think just the fact that we have a film with Resident Evil characters, and it's not like the other movies. It's just a Resident Evil film. It's trying to do a couple things here and there. It's progress. Okay, Resident Evil wasn't the kind of game that had a phenomenal story, at least for me personally. Uh, so there's a lot of ways this film could have turned out, and the fact that it was as good as it was is a good thing. This is a good thing for video games turning into live action properties. Keep in mind, I barely want any video games to turn into live action properties, but if we're going to do it, let's do it good. Let's give these video games some good adaptations, and just the fact that this film isn't complete and utter dog shit, that is an achievement. That is progress. We're going somewhere. And again, they have an after credits scene. They tease a sequel, and walking out of the film, I wanted to see that film. I wanted to see what they were going to do next. I want to see what happens to Leon. Does he become badass, or does he stay a pussy the rest of his life? What happens with Wesker? Chris and Claire might do something eventually. Jill, there's a lot of things in this movie, and again, the way they handled the zombies, I would be down for a sequel. That being said, Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City. Is it going to be in my top 5 of the year? No. It's not that good of a film, but it's not that bad either. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching as always, and until next time with that, I leave you.